One of the most iconic moments in gaming history is the creation of the Entertainment Software Ratings Bureau, or the ESRB. You know, the letter rating on your video game that tells you if your 10-year-old should be playing GTA 5 or not? There's a reason for this. So as far back as 1976 or earlier, questionable video games have been made. Some of the most notable are the infamous arcade game Death Race, where you scored points by running over gremlins and smashing into tombstones, and the infamous Atari game Custer's Revenge, which sparked outrage at the time of the game's release. Soon the video game crash of 1993 hit due to massive amount of low-quality games. Nintendo came about with the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES. With the US release of the console in 1985, Nintendo also put in place very strict requirements and restrictions for third-party developers on any game made for the NES, which one of them being that any game made for the console gets their seal of approval, but also to stop unlicensed games from being played on their system, with the infamous lockout chip, which in the future most console makers put in place as well, but there even went on to make sure that offensive content was censored or removed altogether. During a 1987 interview with a member of the Software Publishers Association, the question was asked if a movie-like rating system should be put in place for the video game industry, and the response was this: adult computer software is nothing to worry about. It's not an issue that the government wants to spend any time with. They got done with a big witch hunt in the music recording industry, and they get absolutely nowhere. However, they did decide to recommend voluntary warnings for questionable games. Fast forward to the 90s, where video games got a bit better with the introduction of full motion video, or FMV, in games. However, two U.S. senators at the time, Joe Lieberman from Connecticut and Herb Kohl from good old state of Wisconsin, led hearings on violence and questionable content in video games, with two games in their sight: Mortal Kombat for violence and gore, and Night Trap for full motion videos that had scenes with sexual suggestions and exploitation as well. However, the two big console developers at the time, Nintendo and Sega, had differing opinions, which caused Nintendo to censor out the blood on the Super Nintendo port of Mortal Kombat. However, Sega kept it all in, which helped boost sales of the game. And in the UK, British censors banned copies of Night Trap to kids under the age of 15. Soon, Sega created their own age rating system for games. The one main point of the hearing was to create an industry-wide rating system to be put in place. However, at the time, Sega had created their own rating system, the Video Game Rating Council, or the VRC. However, Nintendo didn't like it at all. 3DO Interactive, creator of the 3DO Entertainment System, had their own age rating system in which they left it up to the publisher to decide the ratings. And the Recreational Software Advisory Council, or the RSAC, rated PC games. Senator Lieberman felt that these systems were not sufficient enough and pushed for a federal commission for rating video games. And following the hearings, Toys R Us refused to sell any games that the commission deemed too violent for kids. Now, with the threat of a federal regulation, a group of game publishers band together to form the Interactive Digital Software Association. Some of these were Acclaim and Electronic Arts, as well as Nintendo and Sega, with the intent to create their own rating system. Sega suggested using the VRC, to which Nintendo refused to use since it was created by their competition, and with that, a vendor-neutral rating system was formed called the Entertainment Safety Ratings Bureau. Early childhood kids to adults, which later was changed to everyone, teen, mature, and adults only. The ESRB was the first rating system to actually describe what content was labeled and which they felt that parents had the right to know what content their kids was dealing with. Now, the arcade industry, known as the American Amusement Machine Association, or the AAMA, had created their own tiered colored rating system in 1994. However, the ESRB's reach didn't just stop with video games. The suit went on to rate content on the internet and joined with America Online to create parental control. Soon the ESRB was disbanded in 2003. With the dawn of smartphones in 2011, CTA, a group of companies that represented the wireless phone industry, and the ESRB joined forces to create a free voluntary rating system to rate mobile apps, which used the ESRB rating system as well as adding additional info to inform consumers about any data sharing and online interactions. Verizon and T-Mobile were the first two carriers to adopt the system. Microsoft's Windows Phone Marketplace already had the ESRB in place upon their introduction. 1 year later, in 2012, three new groups joined forces with the ESRB. These were the PEGI, which stood for the Pan-European Game Information, the Australian Classification Board, and the USK, a German-based group who rated video games in German countries, along with others, formed the International Age Rating Coalition, or the IARC, to design a questionnaire-based system to rate and distribute to other video game ratings organizations. Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft all agreed to the IARC, with the Google Play Store, Windows Storefront, and Apple's App Store soon adopted their rating system to the IARC. In order for a publisher to get an ESRB rating on a game, they first have to submit a questionnaire in long form describing the game in every long detail, along with a video in some way, shape, or form of gameplay showing all content including unlockable content as well as any songs used in the game. And even some publishers had even submitted a script of the game to it as well. However, like the saying goes, nothing in this world is ever free, and that holds true here. Not only does a publisher have to basically submit every little detail about a new game, they also have to pay a fee upfront as well. The ESRB rates the content used to advertise and market the game as well, so that it's tailored appropriately to the target audience. For example, the ESRB will make sure that an educational game marketing doesn't have gore and violence in it. In 2011, it was determined that the process should be shortened and streamlined to deal with the digital e-delivered content of DLCs. Instead of submitting a long questionnaire and video of the content and having raters look at it, it was changed to multiple choice questions on the type of content included, which then a rating was automatically determined based on the answers. In 2017, Sony questioned how to rate indie games that were sold along with other games. The answer to this was that any indie developer who wants to sell their games to the public must submit that info in the long form and is not allowed to use the short form. So now that you know how and why the ESRB was created, what do those wonderful letters and symbols that we see in games mean? Well, first, each rating is represented by an icon that has been updated to what we see today in games, but what do they all mean? Well, first you have RP, which really stands for ratings pending. It's the promoted material that hasn't yet been rated. However, for material that is anticipated for a mature audience, under the RP, the words likely mature 17 plus will be added. E, this one is for games geared for all ages. It is formerly kids to adults, but was changed to E in 1998. The letter T is for games geared more towards teens or those aged 13 and up. M, of course, stands for games geared for more mature audiences, 17 and up. A is for those games labeled adults only or ages 18 and up. Well, how is this all enforced? It is really up to the retailer to do that. Most retailers ask for an ID for those people buying games rated adults only, and also refuse to sell games that have been rated by the ESRB. Steam allowed developers to put an ESRB rating on their games. However, it was not mandatory to do so, but due to complaints about the inconsistent enforcement of the ESRB ratings, In 2018, Steam started to refuse games that have blatant illegal content or games that they deem to be nothing more than trolling. In 2005, the underground modding community had figured out how to modify GTA San Andreas to unlock the infamous hot coffee minigame. For those who have not heard of this, well, let's just say it was a minigame made for mature audiences. In 2006, Elder Scrolls Oblivion had the rating changed from P to M because of blood and gore that was considered in the original rating. However, the modding community also had a bit to do with it, as a mod was created to add topless female characters to the game. Now I know we all hate these wonderful microtransactions, otherwise known as loot boxes. At one time the question was brought up whether or not they are a form of gambling due to the fact that you pay actual real cash to obtain a loot box that is random cosmetic items. The ESRB decided that they were not a form of gambling because they are voluntary and optional aspects of the game, sort of like a booster pack in trading cards such as Pokemon and others. Because the players guaranteed items but not high value items at the time, and the game that actually waged money are rated adults only. As of 2020, the ESRB announced on their blog that they have added the rating in-game purchases to any game that have purchases with a random element to them, which includes such things as loot boxes, gacha games, item or card packs, prize wheels, and treasure chests. However, the original rating still applies for DLC items. So now you know how those wonderful game ratings came about and what they mean. Have you ever had to deal with games with the rating system? Let me know down in the comments. I'm Professor Retro saying peace out and stay frosty.